170,000 Russians near Pokrovsk. The Kremlin is throwing everything it has, but the Ukrainian Armed Forces are breaking the front. The GUR has stormed into Pokrovsk. Ukrainian defenders are destroying the enemy in the city blocks. Putin's plan has been shattered. The Russian General Staff has admitted the failure of the assault on Pokrovsk. 16,000 enemies remain buried in the ground. Putin's armada has been burned to ashes. Pokrovsk is the point of no return. Details coming up next. Ukraine Today, Rinat Aslanova welcomes you, and here are the main events. Russia has deployed a massive force near Pokrovsk. The enemy's plans have been exposed. The occupiers are advancing in waves in small groups like kamikazes. But to no avail. Despite the fierce onslaught, there is no encirclement or blockade of Pokrovsk. The city is holding. This was stated by the spokesperson of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Andriy Kovalev.
Also, not a single unit of the Ukrainian Defense Forces is encircled.
The defense forces are maintaining logistics. Kovalev confirmed that the situation is extremely tense but under control. Ukrainian defenders are sweeping through Pokrovsk block by block, eliminating the enemy from urban areas. The Special Operations Forces showed footage from inside the city, featuring the work of the 3rd Regiment, which is destroying the occupiers before the eyes of the entire country.
Don't. Run, you need to sleep, don't. He said hands up, he has whatever you want. Maybe you need a friend too. Yeah, we'll find out.
If anything, I'll run away.
Sec.
170,000 Russians near Pokrovsk. The Russian army is trying to encircle the city. This was stated by Senior Sergeant Ron, a scout from the 42nd Mechanized Brigade.
Specifically, the Pokrovsk direction. There are 170,000 Russians concentrated there. At the beginning of the war, 200,000 entered our country. Here there are 170,000 just near Pokrovsk. But there are a lot of them there.
Pokrovsk is the hottest spot in the war. It is here that the fate of the entire campaign is being decided. The troops are conducting an operation undercover, breaking through a land corridor to the special forces. Additional forces have joined the fighters, and a new stage of the battle is beginning. All the details are coming up in the report.
The decisive battle for Pokrovsk continues. Russian troops are advancing within the city, but Ukrainian forces are holding the defense and launching counterattacks, slowing down the enemy's actions. The defense forces continue clearing Pokrovsk of the occupiers now in the northern part of the city. This became possible because over the past few days it was possible to provide reinforcements with personnel and equipment. After a successful airborne operation, additional special forces units joined the GUR commandos, who had secured certain positions and established a ground corridor. According to the President of Ukraine, special operations of various kinds are taking place in Pokrovsk, but most of them should not be discussed. Russian troops are trying to break through the Ukrainian Armed Forces defenses, attacking in several directions at once and concentrating the largest number of soldiers and officers here.
According to various estimates by the Ukrainian command, around 100,000 Russian servicemen are directly or indirectly involved in this operation around Pokrovsk. These are approximate figures. That is, just to give an idea of the scale of the forces involved. I'll go even further. There have been cases where forces were redeployed from the Sumy region and from the direction of Kostiantynivka toward Pokrovsk to reinforce the area because there simply aren't enough people.
We're talking about so-called kamikazes, that is, contract soldiers with an average life expectancy of just 12 days. So, accordingly, this also applies to the special units of the Russian army, plus, of course, the Marine brigades. In particular, the 155th Marine Brigade has been redeployed to the Pokrovsk direction from the Kursk region.
According to the Institute for the Study of War, the occupiers have advanced in the southern part of Mirnohrad and in eastern Rodinske, gradually approaching the city of Pokrovsk itself.
At this point, there is no reason to say that Russian occupation forces have established a foothold directly in Mirnohrad. Currently, the presence of Russian occupiers has been verified at the territory of the Mine Administration 5.2.6. Regarding Rodinsky, it should be noted that the situation is changing dynamically. In other words, the occupiers are trying to intensify their offensive in order to take direct control of locations held by the Ukrainian Defense Forces. The Ukrainian Defense Forces are conducting counterattacks to prevent further advances by the Russian occupiers.
The enemy is trying to encircle Pokrovsk and the nearby settlements. The occupiers are increasing the number of air attacks, particularly using glide bombs and drones.
A classic encirclement, as it is usually understood or described in textbooks around the city of Pokrovsk, does not exist. In other words, there is no solid ring, it is not closed. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, this section that hasn't been closed yet is about 5 kilometers wide, but that's already a critically small distance, and it doesn't really matter anymore because Russian drones are present there, Russian sabotage and reconnaissance groups are already there, shells are flying in, and for the movement of Ukrainian troops. The situation has deteriorated to the maximum over the past week.
According to the General Staff, over the past 24 hours, Ukrainian defenders have stopped 55 assault actions by the aggressor.
During these combined attacks, a tank battalion of the Russian Armed Forces is being used. That's more than 30 units of heavy armored vehicles. Moreover, they are using a tactic where the cost is not considered. The occupiers are well aware of Ukraine's defense forces' superiority in the use of FPV drones, and that no more than 20% of the heavy armored vehicles and, accordingly, personnel will make it to the positions of Ukraine's defense forces.
Despite the enemy's active operations, the Ukrainian armed forces continue to hold their positions and destroy enemy forces.
Over the past week, Ukraine's defense forces have successfully counterattacked and managed to de-occupy 4 populated towns. These are Kucheryevy Yar, Suketske, Zatyshok, and Shakhove. At the moment, the occupiers are trying to intensify their offensive along the flanks of the Ukrainian grouping, specifically in the area of Vladimirovka, with the threat of advancing toward Grishino. These are combined attacks involving armored vehicles, as well as in the area of Rodinskoye.
On the eastern flank of the Pokrovsk operation, in the area of Dobropolye, Ukrainian forces have liberated part of the territory that Russian troops had previously advanced into. According to analysts, the Donetsk region remains the main direction of Russia's offensive this winter, with the goal of achieving a tangible result by spring 2025.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Putin is throwing everything at Pokrovsk. For the dictator, the Pokrovsk-Menorad direction is a personal obsession. Military expert Vladislav Seleznev stated that the Kremlin is sending reinforcements to break through the defenses and open the way to Sloviansk and Kramatorsk.
The coordination of operations is being carried out by Commander-in-Chief General Syrsky. The further development of events will depend on the resilience of the defense in the areas of Rodinsky, Krasny Lyman, Pervomaisky, and Kotline.
The battle for Pokrovsk is the battle for Donbas. Military expert Dmytro Snehiryov emphasizes that holding the city means maintaining control over the industrial heart of the region. It is here that the geopolitical balance is being decided. If Pokrovsk remains under Ukrainian control, Kyiv's position on the international stage will become unshakable.
Whether the defense forces can hold Pokrovsk will determine the further military-political pressure the U.S. exerts on Russia. If the city remains under Ukraine's control, it will strengthen our position and undermine the Kremlin's arguments.
The value of Pokrovsk, energy and resources. Snehiryov reminds us that the area possesses enormous industrial capacity and reserves of shale gas. Their joint development with the U.S. could make Ukraine energy independent. Meanwhile, the Russian General Staff has admitted that the capture of Pokrovsk has failed. In 2 months of fighting, the enemy has lost up to 16,000 soldiers. While Putin hides in a bunker, Zelenskyy is on the front lines. The president arrived at the zero line and met with the soldiers of the 7th Air Assault Corps. The head of state listened to reports on Pokrovsk and presented awards to true heroes. Zelenskyy stated, more drones, more support, more strength. The president emphasized that the state will increase funding for the Corps in key areas so that strikes by the armed forces become even more precise.
There are many details, but the main thing is that there should be more drones, all types of drones. An independence in their production and our own independence. And truly reliable partners of Ukraine.
Meanwhile, on another section of the front, real hell is unfolding. The occupiers in the Kupiansk direction are under fire. Russian troops are disoriented, losing control and fleeing their positions. The armed forces have launched a counteroffensive at breakneck speed, sweeping away the enemy. All the details are coming up in the report.
The situation in the Kupiansk direction remains difficult, but Ukrainian forces are confidently holding the defense and delivering precise strikes against Russian troops.
Russian plans to reach the city center are now failing. Moreover, there is reason for cautious optimism there. Even in the northern areas where they tried to concentrate their forces, things are not going well for them now. They were hit with several precise and heavy strikes, as a result of which the offensive there has now stalled.
The Kremlin is now forced to change its tactics. Instead of a direct breakthrough to the city center, the Russians are trying to bypass Kupiansk from the flanks.
If anyone ends up surrounded there, it certainly won't be the Ukrainian forces. There aren't enough Russians in the city or in the right positions to surround anyone.
Nevertheless, the situation of the so-called double aerial blockade remains. Russian drones are able to attack Ukrainian logistics while staying close to Kupiansk. However, Ukrainian drones are also delivering mirrored strikes against enemy infantry groups and equipment. Logistics are complicated for both sides, but control over key routes and transport hubs remains with the Ukrainian army.
At the moment, additional operational reserves of Ukraine's defense forces have been deployed to Kupiansk to stabilize the situation in this settlement.
Kupiansk is not an end goal for the enemy, but rather a diversionary maneuver. According to experts, Russia is using the tactic of 1,000 cuts. They create tension in secondary areas to divert attention from the main strike. According to the General Staff, the highest intensity of fighting is currently observed in the Pokrovsk direction.
The occupiers are facing the issue of redeploying their operational reserves. The point is that due to the water barrier, the river that separates Kupiansk, the occupiers are unable to quickly redeploy operational reserves and accordingly reinforce their assault groups. At the moment, the occupiers are trying to concentrate their main attack in the area of the Kupiansk railway junction. Gaining control over this key railway station is extremely important for them. A short logistics route, both from the territory of the Russian Federation and accordingly from the occupied areas of Luhansk region, would allow the occupiers to form a strike group, which in the future would have plans to advance along the Oskil River toward the Sloviansk-Kramatorsk agglomeration.
Things are not going well for the occupiers in the rear either. Ukrainian forces are carrying out preemptive strikes on the enemy's strategic targets, on ammunition depots and fuel and lubricant supply points. The goal is to deprive the Russians of the ability to supply their assault groups, to slow down their advance even at the approaches.
Over the past week, the drones of the Special Operations Forces, one of the Special Operations Forces, have carried out a series of strikes on oil depots in the temporarily occupied areas of Luhansk region, which were being used to supply fuel and lubricants to units of the Russian occupation army, both in the Lyman direction and primarily in the Kupiansk direction. In particular, the drones of the Special Operations Forces attacked oil depots in the occupied town of Starobilsk, which is precisely in the Kupiansk direction, as well as in Luhansk. Over the past day, drones of the Special Operations Forces of the Ukrainian Defense Forces have struck a number of field ammunition depots in the temporarily occupied areas of Luhansk region, which is intended precisely to reduce the intensity of attacks by Russian occupiers in this direction.
But while the situation on the battlefield is far from a breakthrough, on television screens Moscow continues to claim victory. The Russian Ministry of Defense is once again reporting the capture of Kupiansk and the destruction of the 16th Mechanized Brigade in the ISU. But there's one detail: such a brigade doesn't exist. According to Moscow, this fictional brigade supposedly lost 8 soldiers, and Ukrainian units in Podpetrovka and Velika Shapkova ended up surrounded. The reality, however, remains unchanged. Heavy fighting continues near Kupiansk, but the city remains under Ukrainian control. Russian forces are taking losses, changing tactics, and searching for alternative routes. And Ukrainian defenders, despite the pressure, continue to hold the line and once again shatter the myth of the Kremlin's invincible army. And what do you think about the actions of Ukrainian defenders on the hottest fronts? We look forward to your comments. There's more to come.